My name is James Aitman. I'm one of the directors at JIFJAF. My colleague Sanjeev Talwar is on this call as well, our tech director. And the purpose of the webinar today is to talk about our normal pathology filing tool, which is working in both EMIS and SystmOne. We are pleased to confirm. What I'm going to do is run you through an overview of how the tool works. Not super technical, but in principle where it lives, how it uses, how it's used, how it interacts with different systems. Then I will go through the bit which is going to be most of interest to the clinicians, which is essentially how you can work out what pathology tests can be reviewed and filtered on by MyBotGP. The way our tool works is it's self-configurable, and there are five logic points, 5 decision trees that you can configure: age, range, keywords, omissions of keywords, gender, checking against the previous test results, and that can be configured in any way at practice level. Within the tool, and I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. A bit about how it interacts with the systems, as I said, where it lives, and the bit which I'm now able to share, we've put it onto our web page, is some of our clients are happy to share the logic and approach that they've used in order to filter on what MyBotGP is allowed to look at or not allowed to look at. And I'm pleased to confirm we have clients that within a couple of days have got up to 75 different pathology tests running through MyBotGP, and more recently some clients have worked out that they can put COVID tests through there because MyBotGP can read keywords on path reports, and I'm even being led to believe by our aftercare team that one practice, although I haven't seen what they've done yet, or PCN has worked out how to push through some radiology tests as well. So I can share a quick spreadsheet online on this call, so you can cast your eye over that, and hopefully everything should make sense. So essentially, who are we and what do we do? So we are a company that builds out products for primary care. Our products have very specific functionality. This one filters normal pathology tests and can send a text message to patients as well if you want it to. We have other products like document filing, repeat prescriptions, patient registrations, and TPP attaching docs, all coming through the pipeline as as we speak. We are pleased to confirm we were part of a Launchpad program, which is oh, sorry, I think someone's not on mute.
I sent that about 5 extra today.
Okay, thank you. I think they've gone on mute now. Pleased to confirm that we're part of a Digital Health London Launchpad program, which is funded by the NHS and government to help innovation in tech. It's quite nice to have that on our site, on our website, and on our decks. And I'll just run through this really quickly because I guess you want to understand where it lives, how it's used, is it safe, and what can it do in reality from a webinar. Anyone that wants more information, obviously we can book further calls and so on. So our stuff is clinically driven automations. What does that mean? It means we've had clinical input in the building of the products in terms of what rules are used and so on and so forth. I've touched on the digital health. We've got really strong track record of working in primary care. So why do I say that? Well, we've got experience at working at Practice, PCN, Federation and ICB level. Why is that important? Well, it's unbelievably important, and it's why we built MyBotGP. We know that everybody does the same thing in a slightly different way. We also know that everybody's provided with the same information in a slightly different format. And we also know that you need to be in a position where you can make changes whenever you like to tools that you've bought to help save time or reduce cost. MyBotGP is built for that. If this is being bought at PCN level, or Federation level or ICB level, it makes no difference in terms of how it's used at practice level. So what that means is I can literally press enter on an email and 5 practices or 1 practice or 50 or 100 practices will all have their own copy. Why is that important? Well, it's very important for normal pathology filing because everyone will have their own way of filtering on normals and abnormals. Different doctors have got different opinions as to how to filter on normals and abnormals. Also, you will be provided with pathology results from different labs. Different labs use different ranges. They use different keywords, different emissions of keywords, send the path reports on different frequencies. So you must have a tool supporting you that can be looked after at practice level. And that's what this tool does. You all get your own copy. You know, if one wants to filter on a particular pathology test in one way, you can do that. If one of your colleagues in a neighbouring practice doesn't, or the path report is provided to them in a different format with different ranges or different keywords or omissions of keywords, they can configure MyBotGP in order to replicate how they would manage that. And that's the reason why our tool is so popular. It's very quick to install. It's a 20-minute download. We let it run for a couple of days, not making any decisions. It reads all of your path reports, and 2-3 days later, then we spend a couple of hours with whoever's going to sign off what it's allowed to look at, not allowed to look at, where they go through what it's read and agree or disagree with ranges or add additional checks. But again, we can cover that off in a bit more detail. More recently, there's been some changes from an ICB level. What your tooling must have. I'm not sure, for those of you that aren't aware of it, you should have multi-factor authentication. So that means, you know, send me a text message or an email just to double check it's me. So it's been built with that. Obviously, we're experts at working with SystmOne TPP, EMIS Web, and so on and so forth. MyBotGP has this certification for pathology filing. It's a DCB 0129. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's a clinical risk certification that's voluntary. What that means is we work with a clinician who's had additional safety training as a clinical safety officer, and they validated the tool that it works. And more importantly, if it doesn't, the appropriate actions are taken in terms of hazard logs, tracking, notifying people. I'm pleased to confirm everything's been fine so far. Technically we don't need a DTAC because we don't see any data. We've got DPIAs, but we can talk about that another time. So that's the challenge at the moment, and it's actually getting bigger. I've got another stat. I know a lot of you would have already been sent this presentation, but according to the data, every doctor in the country spends approximately 19 days a year filtering on reviewing normal pathology tests and deciding that they don't need to be looked at. And by that, I don't mean just all the stuff that comes through as normal from the lab. It means if you can add additional checks to filter on normal or abnormal, or add tolerances, or look for keywords or omissions of keywords. And that's why we built it. Touched on this really quickly already. You know, every practice can have its own copy. It's installed quickly. A couple of days later, it's up and running. This is not a long project that takes several months to build and configure and stuff. We'll email you a link, you download it, you have a little app on your computer. That computer can be a hosted machine, it can be living at the ICB, it can be from a third-party provider, it can be wherever you like, it can be at practice level if you're happy with that. Again, there's big conversations around where it should live, but it can in principle live anywhere, and it's up and running. Easily changed and updated, and there is for our subscription costs there are unlimited reports included, and unlimited volumes, so there's no additional charges anywhere. It's a one-off subscription fee, yearly subscription fee, and as I touched on before, we have clients pushing 75 plus pathology tests through the tool now, plus COVID tests, and apparently some radiology. So that's how this tool can help save so much time and cost. So the interesting bit for the doctors that are going to watch this webinar, or who are part of this, or for the people that are filing pathology tests, how do you work out what is normal or abnormal? So essentially, what you're doing when you look at pathology tests, to pick out ones that don't need further investigation, and not all of them, but a large proportion of them, you are looking at them, and you're looking at the ranges, minimum, maximum ranges. For some, you're also looking at previous test results for potential percentage increases or decreases, for example, prostate. You're looking at keywords or absence of keywords. You know, does it say, for HbA1c, does it say diabetes in the problem page? You're looking at age, and you're looking at gender. And for a number of tests, you are looking at combinations of ranges, keywords, age, gender, and so on and so forth. So with MyBotGP, you can use all of these logic points, all of these fixed points on every pathology test if you wanted to. I'm not saying you would, but you can. So you can look at one test and say, I'm okay. Well, you can pick out the ones that come from the labs and say, well, if you agree with the lab, then just file it. Okay, so that's possible. Or you could say that for particular tests that come with particular ranges, you're not comfortable with the ranges and you want to adjust them. You can adjust them. You can increase them or decrease them. You can say to MyBotGP, if something is out of range, okay, go back and look at the last test result. And if it's less than 5%, you're happy with it, or you're not happy with it. You can configure it to do that. You can configure it to say, look at ranges, previous test results, and a keyword or absence of keyword. You could then add in age and gender, and essentially that's how you build on those 5 logic points, which has enabled our clients to have up to 75 different pathology tests that fit that criteria. Now, I'm not saying you would use everyone for every test, but you might use the top 2 for some, the third one for others. For example, stuff that comes from the lab that doesn't have ranges, you would only go for keywords, others just age. But I'm hoping you get that you can configure the pathology test based on any combination. Configuration can be changed at any time. Why is that important? Well, because your lab might change the ranges, or they might change the keywords, or you might change your mind. Well, that's not a problem. You have, as you can see on the left-hand side, you have your username and password. You simply log in and change the range and click save. In a couple of seconds, it's done. So you're not stuck. You're not stuck with a protocol that you agreed upon several months back to filter on normal pathology test results. You could change it every day. Some of our clients they choose to use this, others don't. You have the ability to supersede some lab ranges if you wish. So if you disagree with the range, or you have stuff that's coming through and it's failing, but because like in a batch in one of the tests, you're happy to put a tolerance on. Again, this is up to you. We don't lead on any decision making around how you use it. Then you're able to do that. Nothing's removed from your system. You still have full visibility of all the tests. So MyBotGP will simply mark what it's filtered, what it's looked at, filtered on normal, and filed, but nothing's removed. So you can go back and look at that anytime. We leave how you cope with those remaining tests in EMIS or TPP down to each practice, and different practices have got different approaches. Some do a bulk archive, some don't, some want to check every week, and that's up to you. Now, there's a super detailed audit log, which we pride ourselves on, which is massively important. Every day you'll receive an email saying exactly what it's done. And it will also tell you what other pathology tests it's seen that it hasn't been given permission to look at, and say, I've never seen this test before. Would you like to add it? Is it includable using the 5, or can it be included using these 5 logic points? If the answer is yes, you can simply press agree, add it in. Next time it sees it, it won't ask you the question. So the way it works is we download it. It works for a couple of days. It reads all your path tests, doesn't action them, copies all of the ranges and the keywords. So for example, liver function test may come through as something like this. Everything's in red. And then a couple of days later, you have a meeting with whoever's going to sign it off at practice level from a medical perspective. You open up MyBotGP and everything's in red. And say, for example, this was all in red. If you agree with it, you click yes, and it turns green. And you go to the next path test, you agree with it. Well, maybe you agree with some of it, but you want to add in a keyword test. So you click add a keyword, write the keyword in, press save, and it turns green. So in a short space of time, well, within an hour and a half, you can have 30, 40 live. And then what tends to happen is people take a breath, have a think, become more comfortable with the tool, review the audit logs, build confidence, and then they come back and open up MyBotGP again, and it will have all the ones it's looked at, but it hasn't been given permission to look at in red. And then they start applying more rules or combinations of those rules. So this is what it would look like at practice level if you looked at this particular test. Now, say for example, this came from your lab. Now, if you were happy filing that based on that, then you just tick that box file for normal report, and then what happens is every time this particular test comes in, liver function test, with these ranges and no keywords present, it would file it because you've told it, if it comes through looking like that, I don't need to see it. I'm good with what the lab says. Now, say for example, you don't agree with the lab. You want to add additional checks. Well, you don't do that, and you leave that blank. Here you have a button where you can send text messages if you like. You just tick that box and it will send a text message. That's pretty straightforward. But if you don't agree with the lab and you want to add additional checks, this is how you do that. So you would say, do I need to do a keyword check? Or do I need to check if a keyword is present? Or do I need to check if a keyword is absent? Or do I need to check if a keyword is in the problem page? And all you would do, really simply, we've built it so it's really easy to use, is you just tick on the appropriate box and you write the keyword in. And then MyBotGP will know, right, we're not following the lab. We are running our own independent tests, our independent filtering on this pathology test. First one is to look for a keyword. Then we go to ranges. You can adjust the ranges if you like, or you could leave those ranges and look for a keyword. And now let's say, for example, for serum albumin in the top one, you wanted to add an additional check to, if it was out of range, that it had that it had permission to still class it as normal if it was less than 5% or 3% or 10% or whatever percentage you want. All you do is click yes and write the percentage increase or decrease that you're happy with. So in that scenario, it would open up liver function test. It would say, oh, for that one, I'm applying my own rules. We're going to send a text message because they ticked the box. I don't need to look for a keyword. However, here are all my ranges. If anything is outside of range, it's a fail. Other than this one, where they've told me go back and look at the last test for a 5% tolerance in order to class it as okay or not okay. So this is on the brochure that we sent, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to share something different with you, the fuller version of this. Excuse my messy desktop, which is a filing rule summary. So here's a bit of a description as to how what I've just run through quite quickly on here, which is a description of how the logic can be manipulated in different ways. As you can see, I always like to mention this one, vitamin D can have 2 minimum maximum ranges, can validate patient age, you can validate test by gender within normal ranges, and so on and so forth, check results, keywords, omissions of keywords. Now this is with some of our clients. Now again, I'm not saying that this is what you would choose to do. Let's see if I can make that a bit bigger without losing some of it. But this is an example, and I have another example I can show you as well of what pathology tests our clients feel can be safely filtered on normal or abnormal from using a configuration of those logic points: age, gender, previous test results, keywords, omissions of keywords. And this is the logic that they're applying to that. Now this spreadsheet has 55. And as I said before, we are up to 70. We do have some clients up to 75. How many they add is up to each practice, and some are happy to max out at 50, 55. Others want to get it higher. And what we're seeing is as people use this more and more and build confidence, they're starting to think of other creative ways to add in more and more tests. So you can obviously get as much safely filtered as you can. A good example I like to show here is the prostate one. So that seems to be the preference at the moment, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ages and 5 ranges. However, we do have some clients who prefer to do a fixed review of the last test. So if a test comes in and it's still normal, they still want to go back and see, okay, but has it gone up more than 10% since the last test? If it has, class that as an issue. If it hasn't, they're happy to pass it through. So essentially it's up to you how you configure it. But just because I think I like to show this because it sort of brings it to life. You can see this is split off in terms of gender. That's got keywords, omissions of keywords. Here's a combination of no keywords, and there. I got another one I can also show you here. It's similar. The rules aren't majorly different, but this is from another client. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah. So you can see here for this list, this is how another client, the pathology, the categories and the subcategories and what they've asked it to look at and how they've asked it to go about filtering. And it's quite interesting to see, you know, what pathology tests can fit into this logic. And I think there's 65 on here. So we do have a little group that we run with our clients where we ask them to share how they've got to where they've got to, if that makes sense. And then we share that internally with our clients and say, look, just to let you know that these sites have decided that they can include these pathology tests, and here's the logic that they're using, just as an FYI, so you're not all starting from scratch each time. Yeah, I think that's on 62. So the list is growing all the time. If I come back to the presentation now, so if we get to the next page, okay, so this is we could actually spend a full hour just on the audit log. So I'm just going to touch on it here. I mentioned it earlier. Everything that MyBotGP is tracked and anonymized in SystmOne or EMIS, whichever system it's using. Everything is there. So at any time, you can go back in and you can look at every single pathology test. So you can do your spot checks and your audits and stuff to make sure that everything is going according to plan. We also email you at the end of the day, every day, whoever a breakdown of what it's done. So you'll get an email every day, and that says that today I filed this amount. This is what we've done. And as I mentioned a bit earlier on in the call, it will also say, and here's a bundle of other pathology tests I haven't seen before. Do you want to include them in the logic? So why do people want to use this? Well, we've talked about the business case before. 19 days of clinical time, give or take, per doctor, every doctor in the country that is has a responsibility for this. People often say, well, it doesn't take me that long, just 20 minutes in the evening, or I'm having my coffee, for 5 minutes, or I skim through them really quickly. But unfortunately, as people, we don't perceive time very well. 15, 20 minutes a day is 91 hours a year. It's a lot of time. Time adds up, and obviously, clinical time is needs to be made best use of. So the more people can be freed to do more complex work, the better. And it gets stuff done quicker. Everything will be up to date. So MyBotGP can run as you like it to. It can run every day. It can be scheduled to log in and out at different times. And it will produce a report at the end of the day saying what it's done. Now, for those of you who want to send text messages, it can be plugged into Accurix. For TPP, it can use TPP texting as well. And what we've seen is that there are some sites that want to, and others that don't. So coming back to this panel here, you make the decision about which pathology test you want it to send a text message to. So we're not saying you have to, it's up to you. So, yeah. So I think what I'll do is I can show a quick demo for those of you that want to see a demo. It's not super exciting because basically what you're going to see is your mouse moving around a screen. Oh, I've opened up the same document, because that's what automation is. It uses the computer in the same way that you do. Actually, before I do that, I'll just talk about where it lives and stuff and how it's installed. So think of it as a person. So it needs a computer to work from. Can be a hosted computer, can be living in a hosting center, could be at the ICB, could be at the practice if you've got a hosted machine, could be on a physical machine. It's completely up to you. It will need its own account for the system it's using, i.e. EMIS or SystmOne. So there'll be a full audit log, and it will use it in the same way as a person. It's not going to go at rocket speed, so there's no extra weight on the system that's using it. It works as a person, and in fact, if you go too quickly in EMIS or SystmOne, it wouldn't like it anyway. So it's built to just run at the correct pace, no heavy load, and it will just sit in the background. It will navigate its way to where the pathology tests are. It will open them up. It will look at them one by one and say, am I allowed to look at that? No. Skip to the next one. Am I allowed to look at that? Yes. Okay, let's have a look at it. Okay, what test is it? And it will read the screen, and it will actually read the whole of the pathology test. So then it will look at the pathology test and it will say, oh, I'm allowed to look at that one. Great. What rules am I applying to that one? It will apply the rules. If it's a pass or a fail, it will finish, and then it'll move to the next one. Open it up. Am I allowed to look at that? Yes. Okay. What rules? Next one. No, I'm not. And so on and so forth. So it'll just run in the background in exactly the same way as a person. So one of the analogies I like to give is that if everyone was going on holiday tomorrow, and there was a last minute panic, you had to do a piece of work, and you had to get someone to come in and cover for you, and you were going to write down on a piece of paper exactly what they need to do. That's what this does. You'd say, right, your job tomorrow is to open up these bits. And when you see that, you've got 4 choices based on what you're looking at. And they're the 2 choices that you make. And if you see that, there's another choice. Then you close that and you go to the next one. So it will do that. And it uses a keyboard and a mouse to do that in the same way. Obviously not a physical keyboard and a mouse, but it interacts with the computer in the same way. And it can't deviate. So one of the reasons that some people like to start to use this tooling, and it is, the future, doesn't make mistakes. If you tell it always review in the same way, it will. And that's one of the things we're really proud about at JIFJAF with the MyBotGP ranges. Is the first time that this type of technology is starting to become usable in primary care. So unfortunately, primary care's technology, the way your machines live, the types of machines that you use is quite old. You're quite far behind the times. So quite often not quite often, most of the time you're struggling to sort of keep up with the workload by doing additional physical work that you need to do as people. When in reality, this type of tooling has been used for several years outside of primary care, where there are bigger budgets, new technology, less compliance to get through. And they're proven and they're saving money. So we're really proud that we've been the first people to break the barrier almost. Break the barrier and get this into primary care, where you can start to make use of, people call them robots or automation tools, but it's actually more complicated than that. These are medical tools or tools that have a logic underpinning, where you can replicate your decisions that happen to be powered by an automation robot that will then say, okay, well, I know what they do in this scenario, so I'm going to press the buttons to replicate it. So that's essentially how it lives, just like a person. I can hear Sanj typing away in the background. Have there been questions? Is that what you're?
No, there's just one question. We can come to it at the end if you want to a Q&A at the end. Yeah, it's just fine.
Okay, fine. Okay, so all right, so I'll unmute myself. Okay, so what I will do now is we'll get back to demo. In fact, before we do the demos, maybe we can pause for a couple of questions if there are questions. Do anyone have any questions to ask? Okay,
so share your slides, please.
Let me share the slides again. Let me pull up this one. Okay, if I share the slides, I can't see the questions, so I'm just going to come off that for a second, and then we'll spend 5 or 10 minutes quickly buzz through the questions, and then I'll get back and I can show the demo again. Okay, so thank you. Okay, how much does it cost? Costing is based. There are two charges essentially. The first charge is to use MyBotGP, which is the actual product, and that's $499 plus VAT. And the second charge is based on how many patients you have, patient list size. So, for example, practice with 10,000 patients. would be 10,000 times 30 pence plus 499, so it would be 3499 plus VAT. And we can send other details out afterwards. How does it look from a patient perspective in the NHS app? They don't see any different to that. It's all internally at your end. If a site is sharing data, does it come through as a spreadsheet or can it be imported into another system? I'm not sure I understand that question. I can confirm we don't see any data. We see nothing. So everything is looked after internally at your site. We'll come back to that later. Yeah, Sanj,
yeah, I think in terms of the filing rules, so the way that the pathology tests are set up to file and the logic that you've applied, i.e. the ranges, keywords, check previous history, etc. So all of those rules that are set up in MyBotGP can be downloaded onto an Excel spreadsheet and can be shared within the practice or other practices as part of your group. So yeah, so that logic and data is freely shareable, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Sanj. So is the user setup based user setup based on role, i.e. can only clinicians or a certain clinician use a setup? Good question. Yes. So it's locked down. Essentially what we're instructed as the guidance from at ICB level is essentially you have and you recommend you have a dedicated owner of the product. Whoever is responsible for it, they have a locked down username and password that only they can have access to. However, you can set additional users that the practice are fully aware of. For example, if the owner of the product is on holiday, somebody needs to log in through a different username and password. They would have their own one, because if they do make any changes, they need to be tracked and changed. So they can't just log in using someone else's login and then forget to tell them that they've adjusted the ranges. So yes, that has been accommodated for. Is this different to the TPP? Yeah, it's completely different. They're not. This is totally different. This tool enables you to use the 5 logic points on every pathology test to replicate how you would approach them. It's not just grabbing something and saying, "Oh, this is supposed to be normal," and pushing it over to the next slide. Sanj?
Yeah, and just to add, the TPP doesn't actually file, it just assigns it to the user. So there is still a piece of work, which is what MyBotGP does based on the logic that you've applied in the platform in terms of reviewing the report. So it just assigns the actual report to the user, but then, as I say, the basis of how you file and review that report is used through the platform.
Yeah, so you can't look at every test and say, do I agree with the ranges? Is there keywords, omissions of keywords, age, gender? Go back in, look at the patient record.
Exactly.
It's not the same at all. I've got 2 hands up. Are we okay popping those questions in the chat? I can see Trevor and Dan. Do you mind just popping them in the chat, and then we'll get through those 2, and then I'll quickly show you a couple of demos, and then we can get back to some questions again, hopefully. So I've got one eye on the chat if anyone wants to pop anything in. Okay, it looks like that's the questions for the moment, unless anyone's typing and it pops up in a minute. Just to reiterate what Sanj was just saying, there is nothing like this at the moment. This tool will replicate your logic in how you filter on normals and abnormals, and is fully configurable. Another question from Norman, is access the same for everyone, or is it RBAC? I'm not sure what that means. Sanj, do you know?
Yeah, role-based access control.
Role-based access control.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 100%. So the access is the same. There are only 2 users which can be allowed to set up. But in answer to your question, yes, the access is the same. There's one role essentially assigned to set up.
And is the second half of that question? Do you want to mute? So linked to what we were saying before, that if the lead is away, who's taken responsibility for the tool, if a second person logs in through a different user, their own access, then any changes are tracked and notified.
I think that where that so 100%. We looked at the RBAC, and essentially the way we meet that requirement is all changes to the filing rules are all audited in the auditing panel. Okay, so a user can log on, a user can update the filing rules, apply the logic. Okay, it can then run the filing. And then tomorrow the doctor goes away, or the primary user is away. The secondary user then may need to make some further changes. And again, it's all stored within the audit log, within the platform, so everything is audited in terms of what changes have been applied. And that's how. And there is a primary user and a secondary user available as part of the subscription model.
Thank you. That's Sanj. Okay, that looks like that's the questions. Oh, another one's popped up. We'll do this one, and then we'll move into the demo. So, regarding PSA, you mentioned age-specific ranges, but can it be programmed to know if the patient has a history of prostate cancer, and then not file a PSA? Would it be possible also to have patient-specific ranges, which might be useful occasionally, e.g., FU of prostate cancer? Sanj, do you want to take that one? Actually, before Sanj takes that, just to be clear, this tool is built for normal pathology filing, for normal pathology tests. We're not trying to identify patients with specific backgrounds and kick off specific searches for that. That we start to move into the world of abnormal pathology filing. We are working on an abnormal pathology filing tool, but we've yet to business case it and see whether that would be able to cover enough that people would want to pay for it. Sanj, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so again, this is all part of the rules and how you can manipulate them to meet your requirement. So in answer to that, we can file based on keywords, whether they're present or absent, if that makes sense. So are we able to look for a patient with a history of prostate based on a keyword? So look for the keyword prostate within their patient record. Now, if it finds history of prostate, then it won't file. So you can say in absence of that keyword. So in answer to your question, yes, you can. It's just the way you manipulate, asking MyBotGP to look for a keyword or an absence of a keyword. So in absence of prostate, please file based on the ranges that you've selected. So that sort of answers that one. The second part of the question is, would it be also possible to have patient-specific ranges that might be useful occasionally? Example, FU of prostate cancer. I'm not sure. Patient-specific. If that's patient, so the ranges are specific at pathology category level, not at patient level, if that makes sense. So you can put in specific ranges. You can break those ranges out by gender, by age, but they are set at a pathology category level. You can't have a specific range attributed to a patient. So I think hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Sanj. Okay, last question, and then we'll go to the demo. I believe TPP are developing their own auto filing rules engine. Do you know anything about this, or is it similar to yours? We don't. As we touched on a bit earlier on, it's as we understand it, and as we've seen from their literature and the clients that are using it, it's not the same. It's as Sanj described it just before. It's around just allocation to a particular person, and yeah, okay, cool. Thank you, Paul. So let me get back to this now. I have two demos which I can share with you. But I always like to make a joke about the demos. If you're looking to see sort of rocket ships and lightning bolts flying and everything, that's not going to be the case. You are going to watch either EMIS or TPP, a system that you use every day, changing pages around the screen in exactly the same way as a person does. What's interesting, I'll do the EMIS first quickly, and then because the first bit is actually the same for EMIS and TPP, and then I'll jump to the demo where you can actually see the bot working. But I mean, it's going to click on the login credentials. It's going to click on the relevant pages to navigate to the correct page. It's essentially going to follow it all the way through. MyBotGP is an evolution in terms of it is a product, and for those of you that have some experience at either, I recognise some names obviously in the webinar. For those of you that have experience of using automation tools in the past or validating their security, this is an entirely different proposition. What we've done, and again, this might starting to be a bit too technical for this tool, is we've productized our tooling. This is not a robot that lives in the cloud and someone is bespoking to work at practice level. We don't believe that that's sustainable long term in primary care. You're too nuanced. This is a product that has that can filter on normal or pathology tests based on 5 logic points and text patients. Self-configurable, fully managed at practice level if you wish, either hosted or not. That happens to be powered by some robots to push it through the system. No, we don't see any data. Everything stays within your environment. Nothing comes out at all. It's downloaded and it works. And obviously we've got all of the correct certifications and cyber penetration tests, all of the stuff that you need to have this. So let's say, so coming back to the demo, this front page here, let's say, for example, MyBotGP, it's been plugged in and it's read your full blood count. This is what it's come up with. So when I was saying before everything's in red, when you click on it, this is in red, and the clinician who's going to sign off the ranges with their colleagues is going to look at that and say, okay, this is what my lab is saying, because this is essentially a snapshot of what the lab says. You'll look at that. And basically, essentially, do you agree or disagree? Well, firstly, if you always agree with that, then you just tick that box, and it will always file it based on those principles, based on that name. Any changes in the way that name is written, obviously, it will omit them. Or if you don't, because one might fail all the time, but you're happy to put a little bit of a tolerance on it, or you just have a difference of opinion, then you don't click that and you configure it yourself. As I touched on earlier, do you want to add a keyword, to look for a keyword, see if a keyword's missing? Do you want to change any ranges? For any of these tests, would you like it to go back and look at a previous test? You click yes and look for a percentage increase or decrease, and you can pre-configure it. Now, what we did in an older version of MyBotGP is where you had the ability to manually add additional pathology tests. But in our most recent update, which we've just patch updated, you wouldn't have to manually add it as we're doing it now. And that's actually another big point. Actually, I'll go back to that as well. So for those of you, again, who've got experience of this type of technology or work in securing products for the NHS, I think what we can share today, hang on a second, I'll pause it here, is that because MyBotGP is a product, it can be patch updated. Now that's extremely important and a prerequisite. So by patch update, let's say, for example, we're on the NHS England registration site for registering patients. So, for example, the way that either EMIS or SystmOne, the buttons that you press to register a patient, let's say, for example, the order of the buttons that you press changes. Well, in the old days, with automation products that are not patch updatable, they will all stop working and someone will have to log into each one individually to fix them. With MyBotGP, we can patch update. So all that would happen is we would see a change in EMIS or SystmOne, or we want to make an improvement to the tool. For example, now it can look at vitamin insufficiencies as something we're working on in the background to add in. And then we send all of our clients an email and say, right, we have increased functionality now. Obviously, we get everyone's approval. And then we can press enter. And then everyone's MyBotGP will say, please log out, log back in, and it will continue working. Now, why that's important is if you're working with 500 practices or 1,000 practices or 50 practices, you need to make sure that they're all up and running, so with minimal downtime. And if you can't patch update, you can't do that. So, and that's the reason why we built this product. So any changes to EMIS or SystmOne, we can code in at our end, and we can press a button, and the tool will continue to work. So just by example, this is just going to run through a couple of configurations here. You can see here for HbA1c, some people say, pause it here, diabetes, send a text message, and does it say diabetes in the problem page? Obviously, you can add additional checks in there as well. And this is all done in the configuration phase, so it's quite quick. after it's read all of the path reports that come from the lab, like it has done here, you look at them and say, do I agree? If I agree, tick agree. If not, add in your other bits and pieces. I'll let this run for a couple of seconds more, just so you can see how fluid it is to be able to look after. It's an app essentially that you'll get quite used to working with very quickly. And then I can show you it in action. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll whiz through the demos as quickly as possible, because essentially what you're going to see is just SystmOne and EMIS being used. And then with the remaining time that we have, we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. And all of that links, and again, if I sort of stop this now and then go back to this, hopefully this is now becoming clearer and clearer as to what it actually means. So this is what your colleagues across the NHS or primary care, what pathology test they've decided can be filtered on using those rules. And that's essentially the point of the tool. We built a tool that's fixed, safe, fixed on 5 rules that we believe can cope with enough pathology tests, 75 plus and growing, in order to save you time. And it's safe, secure, and is there an audit trail? So if we come back to the demos now, so I'll do this very, very quickly, and then I'll go to SystmOne very quickly as well. I'll just forward on this bit because we're quite short on time. We have a lot of people here. So if I pause it here, what's happened is essentially the rules have been all configured, and you're turning it on. Some people want to turn it on themselves. Other people are quite happy to have it scheduled, so it turns on and off at particular times of the day, and runs, finishes, and then starts again. This top right-hand corner is just a box that we put on to let you know that MyBotGP is on, and that's essentially the automation, which is our automation that's built into the tool. And I like to, and again, I know I've said this a couple of times, it uses automation, but this is bigger than that. This is a product to filter on normal or abnormal pathology filing that happens to be powered by some automation. It's a big evolution, a big step forward in terms of what you can use. And this is MyBotGP running in the background. One of our clients was happy for us to share this. Some of you may have seen it before, which is obviously why it's anonymized. But you're seeing MyBotGP working in the background. So in your mind, just think about this ticking away in the background somewhere as a remote worker, almost as a person, looking for pathology tests it's allowed to look at, filtering and applying rules to the ones it's allowed to, and filing and sending a text message. Coming back to how do you know what it's done? There's full audit reports. We don't empty, for want of a better word, inboxes. That's up to you. However, everything in the inbox that's been touched by MyBotGP has been clearly marked. So I've looked at this, or I haven't looked at that. And then different practices have got their own protocols internally as to what they do. It goes without saying, someone needs to own this at practice level. It's not at all you just, again, I know you know this anyway, it's not at all you just plug in and then never look at. It's, like all of the kit that you use, it needs to be checked in with regularly. And that's why we've built out the audit reports, and it sends a daily spreadsheet snapshot saying what it's done. And there's obviously a full audit log in there as well. So this will just continue running. You'll see, I'll just forward that on. It's just clicking around the different buttons and doing its thing in the same way. I want to show you the TPP one as well. So you can see that's basically just running in the background, and when it finishes, it stops. So it's the same principle with TPP. First slide I'll show you is essentially the same, which is this one. And it's no different because the front panel is identical. The same one I just showed a minute ago. You have your configuration panel. Do you agree? Don't you agree with the labs? Do you want to change them? How do you want to bespoke. And then the second one is essentially, okay, it's 9 o'clock in the evening or 6 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whenever you want it turned on. Can you just log into TPP as a user? This essentially is MyBotGP logging in the top right hand corner, and it's going to navigate its way through SystmOne. You'll see like a Word doc opening and closing. That's just part of the program. Again, one of our clients kindly let us share this, so it's been anonymized for obvious reasons, and you're seeing it using it. This is all of this is not a person in the same way as the last demo. This is MyBotGP on its own, doing its thing. Coming back to how quick it is, lots of people often ask, is it fast? Faster than a person, but obviously you can't make it go super fast, or system it's using won't work. But in reality, time isn't an issue with automation because you're not doing it anymore. It just sits in the background doing all the work, and because it's a machine, it will go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. There's no gaps in between. One doesn't take longer or shorter. So it catches up time really quickly. What's important about products like this is, do they run? Are they robust? Will it just run? And this is purpose built for primary care. So we've got about 6 minutes left. I'll let that run for another couple of seconds, and then what I'll do is I'll stop, and then we can see whether we've got any more questions. Okay, so if I need to stop sharing because I can't see the questions, so I'm going to stop now. Okay, well, let's see. So okay, so yeah, do we have any more questions? If anyone wants to pop anything in the chat, we're more than happy to answer what we can answer now. Unless I gave so much information in the last 55 minutes, there are no more questions, which would be a first. But we'll give that another minute or two. That's a new one, isn't it? If hosted, thank you, Claire. If hosted at a PC, does it need a dedicated PC? Is with no other user? Yes, we recommend that. It's better that it's just on its own computer, left alone. We have seen some clients try to sort of share it, so at certain times of the day or night, different people use it, but best practice is just put it on its own machine and let it get on with it. What does the rely? Sorry, Sanjay.
I was just going to add on that the dedicated PC also is part of the range of MyBotGP. There are multiple products, so invariably you can have pathology filing between 9 and 11, between 11 and 3 patient registrations or repeat prescriptions, etc., etc. So the vision is within MyBotGP there are multiple tasks and products which you can have MyBotGP perform in a given day, and hence a dedicated PC allows that to happen.
Thanks, Sanj. I have another question from Gail. What does the result look like in SystmOne when dealt with? It will look the same, exactly the same as a person. Think of it as a person using SystmOne that you've given permission, to do certain jobs for you. So it's still using the same system. The difference is that you can enforce the rules in advance, so you know that person can't deviate, can't make mistakes, and they will actually send you an audit every night as to what they've done. You'll get a spreadsheet showing everything that it's done. So we'll hang on another minute or two and see if there are any more questions. So it's not flagged. When you say not flagged, do you mean archived, or do you mean? Do you mind just adding a bit more around that? And I can answer your question. Oh, I understand now. I understand. Yeah. Do you want me to answer, Sanj, or do you want to do that? Yeah, it's up to you. So we were advised by our CSO that we leave that for the practice to make a decision, and you can make that decision at practice level within SystmOne and with EMIS. So we've set it to stop there because what we've seen again, and the advice from our CSO, the clinical safety officer, was correct. Different practices have got different approaches. So some want to auto archive straight away, others don't. Others want to have a look through. So you can if you want to. Will they still need to be archived? Yeah, but you can, answering Lisa's question, same thing. They can be auto archived. You can set that functionality up so it can be done. So yes, they can be archived. So for the dedicated PC, could it be used alongside a gateway PC or a website like a call queue? It could live on a gateway PC, I believe. Sanj, can you answer that question?
Yeah, I think the key here is as long as SystmOne is installed on that machine, or EMIS, yeah, and you're able to log in and access it and perform the filing as a user would, then 100% it should be fine.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are almost out of time. If we are going to put this webinar on our website, and we'll email you and so on and so forth. I've got another question I'll get back to in a second. But if anyone's got any questions, then I'm sure you've had emails from us, please come back. So just had a quick question come in from here. So what type of automation is this classed at? It's classed as RPA, robotic process automation. But invariably, you know, there's a lot of what is, and the other acronym you put there is intelligent automation. They're really the same. I think these different terminologies are being sort of pushed to say, you know, can something make decisions? Can't it make decisions? But robotic process automation, intelligent automation, essentially are quite similar. What is important about this tool is it's driven by you and will replicate your decision tree. Yes, in the next 5 years, I believe, once costs start to come down, you're going to start to have artificial intelligence and all of these other bits and pieces where machines can think on their own. And but we're not there yet. This is around you look at a path result. Are you comfortable with saying that's normal based on those rules? Is it in range? Has it increased? Is there a keyword missing? You know, and so on and so forth. Brilliant. Okay, well, we're bang on 1 hour. Yeah, and thank you for everyone for joining today. We will put this on our website. Thank you. And if you have any inquiries, please let us know. Sanj, do you want to say anything? We good? No,
I think you've summed it up. Thank you for your time and hopefully speak soon.
Good stuff. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye, everyone.